So now I was kind of like happy with the where I was going with the shoulder armor design. Even if like I'm looking at it now, like I found it terrible. I found it like so overdone at this point. It's just the shapes are weird a little bit, and it just doesn't make sense at all. But anyway, you live, you learn. Um, so at this point, I was trying. I was like, okay, let's. It's more like I don't know how to push it. I don't know where to take it after that. So started moving on to other part of the body, trying to replicate this sort of direction that I defined with the shoulder. Moving on to the second most attention grabbing part at this of the armor, which would be the forearm. And I'm gonna struggle like a bitch on this one because I tried so many things like and it just wasn't working, and the volume is also very different in the shoulder. Shoulder is quite relatively simple, half sphere, but now we have like a sort of cylinder turning into a sort of round triangle that goes from background to foreground, I would say, with the hand at the end, and like it's such a tiny space also. Such a small area to try to design, and also because now we have a hierarchy to create, like the nothing can take more attention than the shoulder, for example. So but you still have to make it interesting, so that's it. So you'll see me struggle a lot right now with that, basically because I suck at design, armor design, and so I'm just trying things purely in terms of visual cues, I say, like to check if it works or not. It's mostly visual for me. Like I'm really not a specialist or already well versed in armor design, obviously. So yeah. So I'm just again like it's the same formula. Just trying to come up with forms and shapes that works well together, works well with the whole of that area, and then works well with the whole image as well, and are again consistent because you, like I was saying, you want to spread the visual direction that you took and the shapes that you created, and you want to spread them around just to make it believable within that direction. So again, yeah, you just start with the big shapes. You just start with the big volumes, and then break it down. And so while that is happening, and I mean at this point, I just keep repeating myself. So yeah. So here I introduced the third material that I was talking about before. And this is a direct influence from the references. I found it like it makes such a stark contrast to just add this uh, really bright gold on top of dark metal. It's just great. It works, and the Japanese, they're so good. Um, it's just another thing that I was talking before is like, and something that I came to really use as always as a test. To know if something works or not is that it's simple. Is it simple and strong? Like it's is it something that, like for example, in terms of like successful design, the way I kind of try to check it is like if I hide this image, if I show you this image for a second and then I hide it, are you going to remember? What are you going to remember out of it? And are you going to remember? Is it simple enough and strong enough to be remembered in a split second, for example? Are the features strong enough and simple enough to be understood in a split second and to be remembered? And I think, especially in games when you see stuff very quickly, very small, in not like a concept or like a still image, but moving and stuff like that. That's especially important to have like working strong silhouette and simply understand something that is it's understandable simply. Sorry, and so that's kind of always how I try to keep it. It's like try to find unusual elements that are simple enough but at the same time strong enough in a way that they're, I don't know what you call it, like fresh or unusual or arresting, or I don't know, something like that. And then that's how you go about thinking. So it's like, don't pile up feature on a character just for the sake of trying to make it interesting, or don't make something so generic that if I show it to you for a second and then hide it, you're unable to describe to me in a word or two what is this character about and how I would find it amongst hundreds of characters, for example. So in this case, for example, if I show you this character very quickly, it would be like, for example, a white cat in samurai armor or something like that, like or like bird shoulder armor or something like that. Bird shoulder armor, white cat, long furry tail, bird shoulder armor, like 2 words, 3 words, and keep it as simple as that in terms of feature instead of big ideas, for example. That's what I'm talking about. And then take that as far as you can without adding anything else. Don't like over design. I think that's what I mean when you say over design. Is like you put too many features, too many noticeable thing, so much that it becomes unnoticeable because it's just a pizza. It's just like so many different flavor that just compete with each other. It's the same as, like, for example, here the fur and the metal in terms of material choices. The fur and the metal are kind of neutral, muted sort of colors and impression. And then when you add the gold on top of that, it's just add that flavor. It's just add that spice, that accent, that just not only is by simultaneous contrast, not only is like being propped up by all the other materials that you've used, but then those materials are also being enhanced by the presence of this new like accent. It is the same as like it's the same as like how the fur, which is like an extremely soft material, like I was explaining before, enhance the metal part, the metal feeling of the metal, if that makes any sense. It's like they simultaneously reinforce each other by contrast, and not only contrast in their nature, but the way they're depicted. It's like if you see, I paint I render the fur extremely softly, maybe more so than it would be in reality, and then the metal is even more solid and hard-edged than maybe it is in reality. I don't know, but you see, it's like this way of thinking is like simple but strong at the same time. I found that is a successful recipe for any sort of design that you can think of, and I think if you check like the design that you remember the most in your life, or the one that you like the most, I'm pretty sure they would fit into that category of like being instantly recognizable. That's why in animation or in stylized cartoon design, it's so difficult, and people that are good at it are so good at it, and that's so good at this principle, because you have to design something very simple because it's very simplified and stylized, but at the same time very recognizable and very memorable. And I think and it's that principle. It's simple and it's strong, and you remember it, and that's the main objective. So that's what I'm trying to do also here. That's what I try to do with every character design, or anything actually. It's like environment's the same. Like if you have too many landmarks in an environment design, and nothing stands out anymore. It's like the example of if everybody's shouting in a room, you don't hear anybody. If somebody's whispering in an empty room, then or just talking normally, it just stands out way more. So it's kind of the same idea. And I mean, to know the balance is a practice thing. Like it's gonna take a while until you're able to judge by on your own, or not. It might be that, I mean, it's pretty simple. It just requires, again, like a certain level of honesty towards your own work, um, you know, or ask some friend, or somebody you trust to give you an honest opinion. But I also like a cold test on anybody, like like I was saying, show them for a second and then ask them to describe it, for example. After a while, you'll be able to do that on your own. But if you're not at the beginning, you can do that. And if they remember it, then you succeeded. If they remember it and they liked it and they find it interesting, or they want to see it again, for example, it's like then you might be able to tell yourself, that's a successful design, I guess. I mean, the ultimate test, of course, is the client. Like if your client is happy with it, and then you follow those rules, maybe you've done something right. I don't know. So here you see me struggle with that thing and trying to come up with. It's like trying to come up with variation on the same theme, I guess. Um, and like it's like when you create a supporting cast of characters for your main characters. Well, this piece of armor, the forearm is kind of the same. It's the supporting cast for the main hero, which is the shoulder pad, I guess. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so yeah, it's like when everything fails, try to bring new ideas again. I make new statements, I guess, or introduce a new material. In this case, I noticed that on some of the Japanese armor, they have some really graphic, like bright colored ropes that they use to attach things together. So I was like, I might try that. Maybe that's what's missing. Um, and then I just removed one of the silhouette part, the orange thing that just suddenly wasn't working or felt really stupid, or just not consistent enough. I don't know. I don't remember, but I just took it out. And the same with the goal. I'm switching the goal on and off because at this point I'm not, because it's the only part. That's one of the issues. It's the only part where it is applied for now, and I'm still wondering if it's a good decision or not. And because I don't know what to do, I just switch to some other parts. Like sometimes that's just what you need to do, is to go work on some other parts of the picture when you're stuck on something else, and it might unlock or help you find solutions. It's the same as like working on 2 or 3 different jobs at the same time, which is something that I often do. Because working on different sets of problems helps me solve each of them, or it just takes my mind off of problem that I'm stuck on and working on something completely different. It's kind of like interconnected vases, or like yeah, it's like a network. It's like all those neurons are on top of each other and somehow working on different sets of problems. Kind of they inter they contaminate each other, or they communicate with each other. Now working on the other shoulder pad, and I always find this angle very interesting because it's very foreshortened, and you have again very little things to work with, very little real estate to work with, but still you have to make it sort of like an interesting. It's a good occasion. I like to depict things receding in space because or like very foreshortened, because you can make a very boring looking object look interesting if you turn it extremely away from you, or you can find examples, or in this case, having at the same time you can see the inside and the outside. It's a nice it's like a nice trick for the eye again, like as far as ocular entertainment, it kind of like works really well. Here, although I struggle with where does the shoulder pad stops and where it connects to the chest shoulder area, or is it hiding behind the fur? Is it not? My terrible industrial design skills at work here. So also in terms of render, because I've already rendered an area, and because this is the same material, it's very easy to color pick and to because you already have all the answers. Um, on the other shoulder. So it's kind of like, is it because it's the same light, it's the same material, it responds the same way. So you can just color pick and quickly adds all these things and get to the same level of result. The first one is always the hardest. And yet again, if it's even if it's the same, um, well, you have to constantly watch out for what I was talking about before about the hierarchy. Like you want to make it interesting, you want to find cool shapes in everything, like in the reflection, in the object in itself, in the reflection shapes, the light and shadow shapes. It has to be interesting in itself, but at the same time, it has to support the main focal point. So it can't be too distracting. It cannot attract too much attention. So what does that mean? Like with everything we said before, in terms of like color, values, and shape. Well, it has to be less contrast, for example, less saturation, less interesting shapes in a way, than the less complex shape in a way than the focal point. So um, really, it's a balancing act, and all the way through, from the beginning, from the black and white shape we did at the beginning, we that was a balancing act as well. It's just it's just the same thing. It's just you're raising the complexity of it, uh, slowly, step by step, level by level, layer by layer, area by area, and constantly checking back on your focal point, which we, like I said before, we pushed as much as possible, and we made sure that the level of complexity and finish there was like the the part of the painting where it would be the greatest, I would say. And yeah. So also you might notice that um, I'm just working on another thing in terms of layers is like for now I'm just working with one material, for example, like I've only so far added a little bit of gold there, but I'm holding back on adding all the little shiny details and decorations. And if you remember the final painting, there's a lot more adornments and details, but you see that like for the longest time possible, and this is very important again, the same way as it was for doing the silhouette, is like you're constantly holding back on adding details and levels of complexity on top of your current layer. And the reason is always the same. It's like you just don't want to start doing the next level things without making sure that you've done really the most you could with that layer, because like I said, if suddenly you realized halfway through the next layer that you were wrong, sure, you can come back to it with layers and stuff like that. You can correct at all time, but it's so much more, in my experience, it's so much more efficient to do it on you do it the first time around. It's like first it's like I was saying, it has also something to do with pacing and speed of execution. Like I was saying before, it's not necessarily that with experience and practice you become faster in terms of just speed, but it's just like your pacing is more steady, and you do less track back, you step back less, and that is so important for your sanity, I'd say. Like there's nothing that builds frustration faster than having to constantly realize that you made a mistake on the previous level and then or stage, and then you have to go back and correct it. And usually because we're all lazy and stuff like that, and we don't want to admit, the first reaction is to denial. In this sort of situation, you're like, nah, I can fix it with this layer. You know what I mean? It's like you're gonna deny it until you wasted your time trying to fix it, and to realize that you do have to go back and fix the previous level. So that is why here, like, I'm really focusing and going back over and over and over and over again around every area, and trying to fix or improve, refine every shape, and the connection to other shapes, etc., etc., etc. All is the same thing. And even like I'm not even talking about like polishing here. It's not about polishing. It's about I can still think at this stage, if you look at the screen right now, it's really rough. It's really just blocking volumes and adding volumes that constantly complement each other and enhance each other, and just make every area interesting to look at. That is the intent anyway. I mean, of course, it's not going to be the same for everybody, and I try to. That's the thing. Like, I'm just trying to make it interesting for myself, I guess. Like, um, that's always like the only kind of reference you can have is your own. So, and you can only hope that people perceive what you perceive. But so that's what I'm trying to do here, and I constantly struggle because I'm not satisfied. And every area, as the more I go in time, the wiser I get, and like I was saying before, and so I just want to keep pushing. It's really a mental disease. You're just obsessed, and it's never good enough. And but then again, it's like because I constantly compare back to my references, and even if, like I was saying, I'm not trying to do a one-on-one reproduction of it, I just try to get the feel of it, the elegance of it, the fluidity, all these are obscure words that we use to try to describe this weird feeling, or the gut feeling, the taste feeling, the whatever feeling. I don't really know how to talk about it. I don't really know how to explain it to you guys. I'm really trying hard to explain it, even to myself, because if you're able to explain it to yourself in simple words, it's so much easier to reproduce it afterwards. But I still really don't really know how to explain it other than that. And I might come up with a better explanation later, but this is what you get for now, because this is where my knowledge or understanding of the process is at this point. But yeah. So I mean, for now you can see that from left to right, talking about asymmetrical design before, the both shoulders, you can clearly see which one takes more attention and which one is more complex. So I guess this is mission accomplished, while the right one still makes sense, and still it's some sort of interesting value arrangement and volumes where we can play with different highlights and different sort of form rendering, which I just find interesting enough at this point. Um, and then we move on. So it's like you can see that for now, I've worked mainly on the top part of the character, because again, this is the focal point. And now I'm starting to work on the legs, and legs are super important as well. Like they literally are the support for your character, both in like physical term, but also back to the supporting casting. They will also echo the design of the top part. What's very difficult for me, again, with my very poor industrial design skills and logic skills, is that designing joints and designing believable joints is extremely difficult to me. I think that the issue, again, and this is where another part where I failed myself, is that and the funny thing is, like, I've started like since 2 weeks learning Blender and stuff like, so learning 3D modeling, and especially for mechanical sci-fi stuff and art edge stuff. And and so like here, if I had taken the time to do a drawing on the side with like for example, a side view or a front view or whatever, to draw, just think out the way the joint actually works, the logic of them, then it would have been much easier to then I don't know, to think about how to paint it, or to put just armor on top and stuff like that. But when I don't, this is like a mistake that I still do. And I just lazy. I'm like, no, I can figure it out while I'm painting it. Of course, I can do three things at the same time. Of course, well, of course not. And so I'm failing at it. And the design of the leg is I think the biggest failure on this painting for me. Is like it's just it just didn't really work. I mean, it's not good enough. I would say it is okay. It is what it is, but it's still something that I have to really work hard uh, on other paintings. But I think, like I said, that is why I'm picking up 3D modeling, because I want to be able to improve that. So I think that's a good way to do it, because it's really focusing on that only, and no painting, no drawing, just thinking out logically about mechanical design. Here you can see that I'm going back on the shoulder pad, and the reason is like I was thinking that volume turning away from us wasn't actually good, wasn't actually the way it would be working. It's kind of I love painting curvy form in metal, because I mean you have all sorts of interesting things happening when a form is turning away from you and it's starting to catch light coming from another direction, and how you can using those facts can mix light sources on the transition area, and that is usually where you get some really good color juice, like interesting color mixes happening. It's something you can observe by yourself with if you point two light source, opposite light source on an object, and that's also the subtle details that makes it look believable and juicy for the eye. Interesting to look at those color transition from cold to warm, from one color to the other. It's the same as here with the horn, doing like the base with a very saturated dark red, and then toning it down and sort of hiding it mostly, but there's a little bit coming through, and because then you put like cold highlight on it, it's just really nice, and it's a nice contrast with the rest as well. So here with the gold, like you've seen me through the process playing with shapes and decoration on this chest plate thing, and I was thinking at some point to design a logo, or like if it was like a Japanese clans, they have so many really awesome graphic design element to them. It's really interesting shapes, and it's always interesting to use these elements to bring sort of like hints at the culture underlying this character or his history, or what clans he belong, or is it his own is it his own design clan, or is he part of a larger group or an army? So it's the same as like using decals and logos on vehicles or military stuff or modern stuff. It's like you immediately make it belong to a greater world and culture. It's like passive storytelling, and also because 2D graphic design is amazing. I think it complements a traditional realistic painting very well. So here there's no really any logic to the process that I'm going through. I'm just going with the flow and not really thinking, and just going area by area and switching and adding stuff where I feel like it, where I feel like I know what to do next, right? Um, Again, it's like I was saying before, on a macro level, when I work on different jobs at the same time. Well, it's the same here. It's like actually the different part of the picture are also different jobs, and each of them inform the next. And so by doing that, when you're not stuck, but like I was saying, you're trying to keep a steady pace. And so by going area by area, you're not getting stuck or track back. You're just going around and fixing stuff and improving and refining stuff. So this kind of material, with this kind of material, you constantly, like I was saying, trying to consider every light sources and bring all the bounce light, local color, the light colors, everything together to create the best shape arrangement. That is, again, like I was saying, not realistic at all. Not how a render engine would like spurt it out, uh, would do it, but it is just based on your own taste, I guess, or interpretation of that situation. Yeah, what can I say? Touching the weapon a little bit. We're keeping the weapon for last. The same as the rendering the fur, because you know, I don't know. We just switched to another day, I think. There was just a zap here. For the fur, why I don't render it, because I still don't know where all the metal pieces are gonna end up, and it might change. So I didn't want it to paint stuff that are gonna be covered in the end. So that's why I keep the fur for the end. Here we're starting the chest piece. Chest piece is interesting. It's pretty. It went very quick, actually, very straightforward. This is like I was just straight taking inspiration from a reference here. I found the perfect reference with the exact kind of same light coming from the same direction with the exactly same material that I wanted. So I just like looked at it and sought to do very heavily inspired reproduction of it. And again, like somebody else could say, well, I would just put the photo right there. But like the problem is like with putting photos is like you're bringing a level of details that's suddenly mismatched compared to the rest of the picture. And again, like there's no selection of information. What I'm doing right now, first of all, I'm designing my own shapes, which are slightly different than the reference. Making them fit exactly in the real estate that I have. Second of all is like I'm selecting details and curating, I would say, this area with just what it needs, not everything that's on the photo. And again, I mean, I could have manipulated the photo and like reduce the amount of details on it and like you know use it as a base and paint over it. But I don't know. It's just that there's a point where it's just like it becomes easier just to paint. It's just as fast as painting. So why not paint? And again, by doing it, it sort of makes you go through building up those form from nothing, and then sort of like kind of understanding what you're doing better, why those form and shapes come to be. It's better understood when you do it yourself, I guess. The one thing that I came to realize after leaving this rest for a while is that that chess piece, in terms of like the combination of functionality plus shape, I guess, is like something that is much more successful than the shoulder piece, I guess. Um, where the shoulder piece feels random, this is like it feels like it's a perfect match between aesthetic and functionality, which is something so hard to achieve. So here again, you see like the cold, warm. The darker it gets, the warmer it gets, because that's the local color of the metal. And then getting lighter, you start seeing the influence of the light color. All this simple principle, by the way, that I've already. I mean, I kind of explained it like years ago in a video, in a Gumroad video, and like it's an it's a reason why I haven't done new videos since then, because there's nothing new. It's just like it's the same thing applied to more complex combination of forms, but it's the same principles. It's just like it's been discovered thousands of years ago, and it's still the same thing, because reality and doesn't change, so the way we depict it doesn't change either. So that's about it. I mean, it went pretty fast. So this is like the part that I least struggled with in the whole thing. I was like amazed at how quickly this got solved, and how it really complements the rest. It's like it was still very satisfying when it goes smoothly. It was like this, like that was what, 10 minutes? No, maybe an hour. The reason I haven't talked about it, but and it's probably something you already know, but the reason you zoom out is to get it's basically if you think in terms of like traditional painting, this is the distance from which the paintings should be looked at, I guess. You get that a lot when you go to museum and sometimes and you look at paintings and you know when you're at the wrong distance when something feels like off or it doesn't come together, and or you feel like you asking yourself why is this painting here, but like there's a lot of time when you step back by intent or by just pure luck, and then you look again at the painting and you're like, oh, this is amazing, and you realize that this is probably the distance from which the painter painted it, and that's from this distance that the effect that he was looking for is achieved for some reason, because that at this size everything comes together. All the instead of having like a bunch of pixels in this case or a bunch of pigments being standing out from each other, they just the eye just like crunch them into something that is greater than the sum of its parts, I guess. Um, and also, so for me, for example, it's like the having the design fits 100% into my screen. For example, this is my viewing size. This is because I like to see it. Although that might be not the final thing, because the client might want to print it in gigantic fucking size. So you have to paint it 100% of the actual resolution, which could be that on your screen you only see 15% of your character, but it has to look great at this size. Sometimes it happens, especially for marketing illustration. But anyway, you still kind of paint it. I still kind of tend to paint it from the point of view of like having it fitting wholly in my screen, and it has to look good at this size. And in this case, because it's a painting that was done quite like I didn't want it to spend too much time on this painting for the sake of reducing the demonstration time. So it's not so tight when you look into it. Like when you zoom in, it's really kind of rough actually and loose. But because it works at a distance of like what you're going to see on an art station, for example, a gallery or something like that, then it's enough. Then you can say, okay, if it looks good at this size, then I'm going to stop here, which is a good way of checking it. And also because that small size, it keeps you from adding useless details. What I mean by useless details is like if you start adding something and then you zoom out and you can't see the difference between before and after, you probably shouldn't be doing that, because it's just useless. And that's something you learn to stop doing with experiences as well, I guess. Which is something you probably heard before, but like the difference between a more experienced and a beginner is that you don't do useless. You do less useless things along the way, which you actually don't get faster. It's not like you get faster, because like this is like, again, like I was saying, this is sped up 5 times. So in reality, I'm quite slow at painting, really. But the difference is you make less mistake, or you don't spend as much time doing useless things. I think that's the main thing. It's not that you're faster, it's that you spend less time doing useless things. Or like I was saying before, you restart from scratch faster, because you've been down this road. You know that this shape, if you're honest with yourself, you know that this thing is not going anywhere. So instead of like fidgeting with it and trying to make it work for hours, and for the end having the same result of like scrapping it, then you just scrap it. And that's what makes the difference between a skilled person most of the time. And it's the economy of movement. It's like doing the same thing with the least amount of energy deployed. In this case, it's like the amount of brushstrokes, or Control Z, or whatever you want to call it. But it's like the economy of energy for the same result. And so that's it. And I'm still fucking with this forearm design, and you see that it still doesn't work. And it's probably the part of the design that I've spent most time on. It's always the part that you suspect the less that's gonna give you the most trouble. But it's also useful because it points out right in the it points out exactly what are your weaknesses in terms of like understanding of form and shapes and design, and that forearm area, or the logic of it, or I don't know, there's just something that I don't get. And so it's a good indication of something I should work on later on. And this is something I tend to do as much as possible, some sort of like post-mortem after I finish a work, or it's like, what did I do right, what did I do wrong, what should I try to focus on the next job, or something like that I didn't do properly here, or did too many mistakes, or didn't come at it in the right way or the most efficient way, which is kind of like I was taking the example of the line work versus silhouette work before. That's kind of the same thing as like, because I did a lot of work like that where I started by line work for a long time until I realized that I was wasting my time. It was just, yes, I like to do line work, so there was like the conflict here. But in terms of pure efficiency, I was wasting my time. So now I just start with silhouettes, because it's useful right from the start, instead of the line art being something that you're gonna throw away. and something also that like confuse you and lead you on the wrong path. So now we're coming to a much more interesting conclusion for the forearm design, which is like a more sober, more elegant, I would say. I find it more elegant anyway, more simple. Um, and actually, it's funny because it makes me think of like mathematics. It's like it's so funny how I remember my teacher. I've never been really good at mathematics, but one thing that I remember is like um, my teacher saying is that more often than not in mathematics, the most elegant, simple solution is the right solution, and somehow it kind of echoes. I think my experience in paintings is like. Again, it comes back to the simple and strong thing. It's like the simplest, most elegant solution is often the one that works the best. And in this case, for the forearm, is true. But there's no formula for it. That's the difficult part. There's no. Every case is different. Every case is like is unique. So you can't apply anything to it.